Good afternoon. We are here sitting as the Board of Trustees.
You just keep doing your thing.
I couldn't hear myself think. We're here as the Board of Trustees of the Natrona County Parks and Recreation System. Our meeting is today, Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. It's 3:34 in the afternoon. The meeting's called to order. May we have a roll call?
Present.
Here.
Here.
Here, please stand. Sorry, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Brown, good afternoon. Would you please come on up to the table? I think we'll be having quite a bit of discussion with you today. Your old hat at this, we're new to this, so I thought we would start by getting some background discussion. I know you've been in your position for a while, but not for decades and decades. But maybe you have just some anecdotal information about what happened prior to your being Parks Director, and then maybe bring us up to speed on what the Parks Board has been up to more recently. I think the microphone, I think we got it now.
I think we finally got it, yeah.
Great. Well, can you just give us a little bit of background and maybe the audience a little background on the Parks Board?
Okay, so my understanding is, I believe in 1996, the administrative board was dissolved for reasons that I'm not 100% clear upon. I think there may have been some issues going on there that probably caused that. Since then, the Parks Board has been an advisory board up until this point. Over the last, just over 3 years that I've been with county parks, the advisory board is basically a sounding board. I provide a monthly report of the activities going on. We discuss them. I answer questions about the projects and things that are going on, events that are going on. And they bring up concerns that they hear from the citizenry. Dogs off leash, people walking on the ski trails, mountain bikes in the bridle trail area, things of that sort. The other things that the Advisory Parks Board has done in the past is they've been involved in review of capital projects such as the Diabase Campground at Pathfinder, the Nordic Lodge, and usually it's a high-level review. The Parks Department's developed those plans with our professional consultants and got to a stage where we wanted some public comment. So we start with the Parks Board. I get their approval, and then we usually promote that on the county website. The Parks Board on those projects then provides a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for approval of those capital projects, as well as some other, minor project changes and whatnot. So that's really that's what I've seen them do over the last several years. Mr. Hagler with Road and Bridge, who's run parks off and on for the last 20 years. I think he kind of ran it the same way because that's where I took my guidance from as assistant parks director. I believe Commissioner North might be able to clue in a little bit because he was on the Parks Board prior to being on the commission. But that's kind of what I've seen through the history of the agendas and whatnot. I think I probably leave out some of the more minor details of day-to-day operations and don't discuss those with them. Or, for example, out at the Lake Alcova, we have construction permits that I have to review to make sure they meet certain guidelines for new decks, new docks, new trailers, replacement cabins and whatnot. And I don't really discuss those. Occasionally I bring my project tracking sheet in and kind of give them an update on that, but for the most part, I don't bring those reviews into them for approval.
Commissioner North, and then council, if you have any kind of color that you'd like added to the conversation. I know you've researched kind of the old history of this quite a bit to get us where we are today. And I don't know that we need to get into that necessarily, but if you think that just for our education or our edification, it's useful, then you can weigh in there too. But Commissioner North, do you have anything you want to add to kind of that background history?
Yeah, I do. 6 years ago, one of the things that was done when we did have requests for any operations that were out at the lake, they all came before the Parks Board, and we all looked at every one of those, and we did talk about those, we did discuss them, and we didn't have the final say, but we did approve them to move forward to the Parks Director. And that worked as a liaison and gave him a little bit more support at the time so that anything that was going on out at the lakes, everybody was aware of. We did the same thing for anything that happened up on the mountain. We discussed different things that were coming up, different problems that existed, and the Parks Board basically worked as a sounding board. We didn't necessarily have the final say, but we did vote on things. We did take that into consideration. So it was working more as, even though it was an advisory board and we didn't have final authority, we did bring that information to the Parks Director, who brought it on up to the county commissioners for the final say. That worked very well because the people that were on the board had different communications with different groups out in the county, and so it really broadened the input that came back to the Parks Director at that time, and I think that's something that worked really well, and it was everything, and it also helped the Parks Board know what the problems were, what the issues were that were coming up. So if somebody called and asked, it made it easier to discuss that and actually explain why, and took a lot of the heat off of the Parks Director at the time. So that was something that was good. There's been several changes since then. There's been several different Parks Directors, and every time we've gotten a new one, the direction of things has changed, and for different reasons, different management style, different direction from the commissioners, or something else. So I think that's the main thing that, and this does, the advisory board has been in place for a long time, and I still have reservations about whether that was actually an issue or not, in my personal opinion. I know what the statutes say, but I also know that it's never been really addressed or brought up as being something that we had to work on.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Laird?
just one quick comment that you probably already know this, but one of the things I was told is that they wanted that Parks Board to be structured the way it was structured is because some of the old county commissioners thought it was added too much to their current burden as county commissioners to be running the parks from the standpoint of a direct management as opposed to a commissioner. And so that's why a lot of that was done and changed. And I suppose it's something we need to recognize to some extent.
Council, do you have anything you want to add to the background?
No, I don't. I think what Commissioner North and Mr. Brown have said is accurate.
Michael and Commissioner North, as I look back at the minutes from the last maybe 6 meetings or so, it looks like typically they're anywhere from a half hour to an hour, maybe a little bit longer. Is that kind of where they've been recently?
Yeah, correct. They typically run about an hour. And typically we don't have any public. Most of the time we have 0 public attending. So, and we almost always have at least 4 out of the 5 Parks Board members in attendance. And so we've been able to have a quorum and have the minutes approved and whatnot. So yes.
Commissioner North, back in the day, 6 years ago, or, when you were giving some of that history, approximately how long and how often were those meetings?
They were still scheduled once a month, just like they are now. And at that time, they were about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Because the information that we were going through, and it was something, it was basically designed to take a lot of the day-to-day operation stuff where the commissioners didn't have to deal with it, where the parks director could kind of sift through and go through things. And it was also to give him a little different insight on how things were done. When you have more than one person looking at something, a lot of times you don't always see what's right in front of you, but looking at it from a different perspective, you get those different ideas, and that just helps make things go a little bit smoother. And we had a very active Parks Board back then. We had a lot of people that were interested in being on it, and a lot of people that gave a lot of very valuable input.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Milne?
yeah, it was on average about an hour to 2 hours, sometimes longer. The Parks Board back then was what he's referring to, appeared to be more involved in operations planning than it is currently. It seems that the Board of County Commissioners, our board, has taken over some of the duties that were being handed or given to the Parks Board, their authorizations of what they could do. It started back with Kaufman and her liaison, and bringing some projects forward that would have normally been held or mainly taken care of by the Parks Board, that were put into the Board of Commissioners' hands instead. And ever since then, it's kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's kind of
More.
it's gotten less and less and less for the Parks Board, and more for the county BOCC board. So I think that would be a good thing if we could start delegating back to this board, the Trustees Board, or the Parks Advisory Board, and let them start handling a little bit more business than what they've been in the past, recent past.
I agree with that 100%. I think that's something that the advisory board did a lot more. They took a lot of ownership of what they were doing. And, if all you're doing is coming to a meeting right now and listening to what's going on, and you really don't have a whole lot of say in it, and you don't have a lot of input, you don't have that ownership, because and so, I mean, yeah, the meetings go faster, but there's a lot of things that, as far as the management goes, we have a lot of different communities, recreational communities in this county that know people on the Parks Board, and they bring things to you. And it's just like we all get phone calls all the time for different things. And I think that's something that's really important, because if you don't we always have certain people that we get along better with or easier, or we can talk to easier. And if they have that opportunity, then those communities will come and talk to them, and it does. It opens up dialogue. It makes things go smoother, and it also helps us know exactly what the requests and the needs are of the community.
Michael, what are your thoughts on having the Board of Trustees or an advisory board provide more feedback, provide recommendations, kind of go in a sense, back to kind of where things were a number of years ago, so that's more than perhaps, and I don't want to diminish what was going on, but you've kind of expressed that it was kind of a reporting, using them as a sounding board, kind of modifying it so that it looks more like it did, where there's more of an engagement perhaps, and making potentially recommendations to this board.
Yeah, I'd be definitely open to that. Since I've been involved with parks, the Parks Board agendas and minutes have all been constructed in my office. Occasionally I get input from the chairman, can you add this item to discuss? But all of that's done through my office, so sometimes I probably just simplify the act just because I'm having to do that clerical work versus the board preparing an agenda and saying we want to discuss this item, or we've heard about this. It really kind of falls on my office to prepare those items. So I probably kind of gotten in a rut there, and also I really took lead from Mr. Hagler, who previously ran it, to this point. So that's kind of where I ended up here.
I mean, with a more perfect board, it should hopefully take some of the load off you a little bit and direct, give a little bit assistance to you and direction to the Parks Department, not just add to your work pile, hopefully.
So where they have provided assistance in the past is, like, for example, I have a Rotary Park Committee, they want to improve signage at the bridle trail and whatnot. I do have a board member on that. I have a board member that's been involved since I started the Hell's Half Acre project and has assisted with the grant writing and whatnot. And that, we do that, we basically tag team those and work together through those, and I get their input in those matters. And there was another project, maybe it was a summer trail master plan that they had quite a bit of input in. But typically the meetings are once a month. I have some communication, not every month, with the board, but mostly it's at the meeting.
Well, and Michael, I'm not suggesting that the board takes all that stuff away from you. I'm just saying that they work in conjunction with you, so that they have a little bit more information, so that they are part of that decision-making process. It's just like the Central Wyoming Trail Alliance. Those guys are always, they're always working on things. And I think, I know there's several guys that are on the board right now that would be more than happy to help you out and not necessarily take over your position, but just basically work as a liaison for some of these different groups and help present things from a different perspective. So, I mean, that's really what I'm getting at with this, is that you just work as a whole within the community, and not just having you be the only point of contact for a lot of this stuff. I know the board hears stuff, but that's basically what it amounts to. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, has anybody commented on whether you actually need a meeting at once a month?
We haven't commented on that. Michael, what are your thoughts on Commissioner Laird's question?
I think it's probably beneficial. For one, there's always something that comes up, you know, starting here in then in November, December, January, February, I will get quite a few comments from the board during the meetings about the grooming, the ski events, the rule breaking, how we can improve, you know, getting people to understand, you know, getting a ski pass, not taking your dog on the trail, just a multitude of items that come during that season. You know, in the middle of the summer, not so much. Most of the current board is not, I guess they're more affiliated with the user groups on the mountain per se. Now, a board member in the past, he was affiliated with the lakes, and I would get more information from those groups through him. But I think once a month is sufficient. I mean, there may be times that we should probably meet more than that, but once a month, I wouldn't recommend less than once a month.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the election of officers for the positions of chairman, treasurer, and secretary. Council, are these required by statute?
Yes, they are, Mr. Commissioner.
And I note that the rules and regulations that we will be discussing in a few minutes don't really speak to officers, how and when they're appointed, how and when they trade out. So it seems like that'll be a comment I'll make here when we're talking about the rules. But I just wonder, there isn't, I think, a whole lot of statutory guidance with respect to what those positions do. We have those positions on some of our other outside boards, whether it's the Fair Board or the Airport Board, et cetera. Have you, or I guess, has Michael, have you, or Heather, have you looked at what some of those other like the Airport Board or some of the other boards, the Weed and Pest Board, have in terms of their bylaws or their rules on what the different, how the board is even constructed and how the officers are elected and appointed?
I've not looked into that. I do know that the current Parks Advisory Board did adopt I don't want to say bylaws. I don't recall what they titled it, processes. I believe the county attorney reviewed that at one time. And I'm not sure if it has a process in it, but that was by the advisory board. They were trying to get some documentation as to structure and whatnot for the board.
Does it set forth the authority and responsibilities of each of those offices?
I would have to reread it, and I did not bring that with me today.
Michael or council, or would those, I haven't looked at those, would those then be applicable to the officers we're currently selecting?
So, Mr. Commissioner, I don't believe so. They have, these were adopted May 11th of 2023. There's Natrona County Parks Board policies and procedures, which I think is more specific to the advisory board and their functions and what they're doing. With respect to the specific officers of the Board of Trustees, we have not yet looked at the other similar boards, such as the airport or the fair, to look at their bylaws and to see what the functions of those officers are. So that's something that we can certainly do, but we don't have that information available for today.
Is it your opinion that we need to appoint those officers today?
I think that that's necessary with respect to the certificate of organization that we prepared for your consideration today, that if you're going to approve that, I think that those officers need to be selected and voted on today, unless you want to postpone consideration of that today.
What's the downside to not approving the certificate of organization today?
We will not be able to consider the rules at this date.
Okay, very good. Any other preliminary comments, commissioners or council or Michael, before we have an election of officers?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Mel?
I think we'd be fine moving forward. I always hate voting on something, or whether it's position, whatever it is, without knowing what it is, other than just having a title. It'd be like voting for a resolution condemning or having gravel parking lots in the county. Well, what does that mean? So without knowing the responsibilities behind those positions, their authorities, I don't feel comfortable voting for them without having something to vote for. I understand that we were just standing this thing up, and I get it, but I think we need to have those clearly defined before we can move forward personally.
So are you suggesting we hold off on the certificate of organization as well as the election of officers?
I absolutely hate to do it. I really, really do. But yeah, I think we need to have, be able to vote intelligently on clear definitions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner North?
I'm going to disagree with that because we have the authority to establish what those different positions do. We can go ahead and elect those positions, and then we can establish what their requirements are after they're established as part of order. That's not something that we have to do right now. That's not something that we have to have firmly defined at this point in time. We can actually go through, we can appoint those positions, and then we can move forward. And then in our next meeting, we can actually just discuss and define what those responsibilities are, what the limitations of those responsibilities are, as well as what the limitations of the advisory board are. So I think that we need to go ahead and vote on that today.
Commissioner Laird, do you have insight or an opinion on this?
Well, I have a couple of insights. One is that I don't like always putting things off for whatever reason we do it. The other one is if you develop what each one of these positions do later, and the person who got elected didn't want to do it, he could quit. So I don't think it's such a binding factor that we slow the whole process down. I'd like to see these emergency park rules put into shape right now. And I think it's important because of, with the sheriff's report and all of that, I think that that's something that should be done sua sponte, as Judge Forrester used to say, which means right now. So I'm not uncomfortable with doing it that way at all. It's a free country. People don't, they get elected to some position, and then it's created in a way that they hadn't anticipated and don't want to do it. They don't have to do it. Somebody else can take the job. I'd like to see it get done just for specifically to deal with these rules. If it wasn't for that, I'm not sure that I would care much.
Very good. So I suppose we could vote on whether we have an election of officers today.
Why would
Although-
why would that require a vote if it's set for hearing and its notice has been given to the public? Now, here's what I want to point out. Is
You
this
want me to
because
answer
Friel
that
isn't here?
question, or are you gonna,
Is this because Friel isn't here?
Commissioner Laird, do you want me to answer that question?
No, I don't.
So council, we have some reservation. We have, some that want to move forward. Let me just say that I feel, so if we were going to take a vote, I would vote in favor of moving forward today with the election of officers, the certificate of organization, so that we can adopt emergency parks rules. We have devoted some time and attention and energy to getting to this point today. I want to continue to make progress. I feel that there are a lot of uncertainties with respect to how these offices are going to be elected and removed and, and operate in the authority, whether we're going to have bylaws, whether we're going to have similarities with some of the other boards that are managed and operated well. I think that all, those are all, real questions, important questions, and we're not going to answer those all today, but I do feel that it's imperative for law enforcement in particular, but for other areas to get these emergency rules adopted. So let's move forward. So I think that there would be 3 in favor of moving forward today for the election of officers. So let's go ahead and do that. I think that we can do this a couple ways. I prefer as informally as possible. We have 3 offices to fill. We can do it by people volunteering, people nominating themselves. What's your, what do people want to do?
One small question first, Mr. Chairman. This maybe is for the county attorney. Aren't the rules we follow the Wyoming Administrative Procedure Act?
Mr. Commissioner, for the adoption of the rules, that is correct, yes.
Well, wouldn't it be to follow that for purposes of how you run the meetings?
So I guess I'm not sure which rules you're referring to. Right now, because you're newly formed, you haven't adopted any rules governing practice and procedure of the Board of Trustees.
Well, my understanding, and I could be wrong because I haven't, it's not necessarily my level of expertise, but I just thought the Wyoming Rules of Administrative Procedure would kick in, which does speak to elections and those kind of matters and duties of various officers, I thought.
My familiarity with it is more to do with the adoption of regulations and rules and contested
If you
case
check that
hearings.
out later, we could save ourselves some time or get some guidance in any event. Mr. Chairman, yes, I think some person wants to be the chairman of this board, and I think it's Dave North. And I think it's a good choice because he's apparently had plenty of experience in that area. He isn't saying anything, though. What do you want, the job? Well, you need to put on your microphone. Well, he just said that he'll take it in several different ways.
Commissioner North has indicated willingness to serve as chairman. I would also like to be chairman of this for about 6 months and till the end of the year approximately. And the reason for that is because I think that I would like to be involved with getting this thing off and running and focus on governance and structure and rules. I do agree that Commissioner North would be a very valuable member and a valuable officer and probably chairman of this moving forward after things are set up, in particular because of his background and knowledge, especially up on the mountain, but involvement with parks over the years. So I would seek to be chairman till the end of the year, and then I would resign and let someone else be chairman. That's kind of how I'm looking at it and why I would seek to serve in that role for the next, well, till December 31st.
Mr. Chairman, that may be all I have.
We'll know next week.
That's right. So at this point in time,
And
I think I would do fine as chairman. I think I could work with everybody, and I think we could go through and get everything set up as accordingly and rule favorably with working with both the parks commission and
I do have a question. Per the resolution, the 5 members of the Board of Trustees were appointed to a certain number of years. That is not, am I wrong in understanding that's not tied to your current titles as county commissioners?
That's,
So once, if somebody's no longer on the county commission, they can still remain on the Board of Trustees, correct?
that's correct. Council, do you want to just speak to that briefly?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, that is correct, yep.
I think those were just your placeholders, Michael. Don't really have anything at all to do with commissioner terms.
Okay, thank you.
What about, well, we can vote on chairman, or we can talk about the treasurer office and the secretary office. Does anybody want to be treasurer or secretary? Okay, would anyone be willing to serve as secretary or treasurer? That's interesting.
Now, Commissioner Freeman's not
Can he be both?
here. You could,
Yeah, you could,
One of
we
them,
could
please.
put it on him and then he could do it.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Milton?
I'm not opposed in the future point to be either position. I do, going back to my previous statement, decline any nomination.
Commissioner Laird, would you serve in one of those capacities?
I can't answer that question right now. I'd like to see how we handle the chairmanship and go from there. But I truly, I don't want to have anything to do with money. I just have told myself I don't want to deal with any of the county's money other than as a commissioner and when we vote on things. And I am a little unsettled about this whole board because I think it would be better as a citizens advisory board. Are we maintaining that as well, Mr. Chairman?
I don't think we've discussed that.
I think I'd like to see that continue and then it'd be a matter of then us stepping in if there was something that happened with the advisory board, either approving it or not approving it. But I think you're asking for a whole change in our commission duties and various kinds of conflicts of interest that can arise there.
Do you have examples of conflicts or concerns of conflicts or potentials for conflicts?
Well, you could have to think about it, but if you approve something generally through the board that would be perhaps overruled by the county commissioners, if it was then appealed to them, I would say that could be a problem. It almost seems redundant in a way, to tell you the truth right now, anyway. And I think I thought the purpose of the whole thing mainly was to get these rules into effect so the sheriff could enforce these rules for the safety of our citizens. That's the only reason would like to continue to see it pursued today. And I understand, Mr. Chairman, you wanting to do this, but my God, Mr. Chairman, you do quite a few things already.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Milton?
Heather, if we can get through the chairman portion of this and not maybe determine the other officer positions at this time, could this board then move forward with the emergency rules? Or do we need a full?
Mr. Fisher, I think you have to elect the full slate of officers today. I will point out, I think that if somebody determined they did not want to be in the position they were elected to, that you could have different elections at your next meeting. And if someone else is willing to take
Okay,
that
so
on, do
Heather,
that.
we could basically appoint the positions or elect the positions, and then after today, they could resign.
Of course.
I mean, I'm just saying,
I
I'm just
think
saying to
that
meet
the
this, to
officers
meet the
could change,
requirement
yes.
of the statute, so we can adopt these rules under the emergency process, we could do that.
I believe so. I think the officers could change
Okay.
subsequent to
Okay.
today, yes.
What are your thoughts, Commissioner North?
That we fill the positions today with whoever's here, and if you know, that doesn't mean that you're permanently attached to that position as far as the treasurer or the secretary. But that way we can move forward, we can approve the certificate of author or organization, and we can adopt the emergency park rules, and we can move things forward so that we can actually get some things enforced and done.
Commissioner North, are you interested in any other of these offices?
What?
Interested in any of the other two offices?
Not right now, I'm not. I'm interested in being the chairman.
And Commissioner Laird, you're not interested in being treasurer? Correct?
Mr. Chairman, I would probably do it to get these rules passed.
And Commissioner Milne's in a holding pattern on, because of where we stand with respect to the governance structure, or lack thereof. Well then, let's do this. Let's have Commissioner Laird be secretary, I will be treasurer, and Commissioner North will be chairman. And we'll move forward.
Do we need to
Like
put that
that.
to a vote?
I don't think so. Do we need to vote, council? It does say unanimously elected, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
What's that? Repeat that again. Okay, so let's have a motion to elect those officers.
I move we elect the officers you named.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner North as chairman, I would be treasurer, and Commissioner Laird as secretary. Thank you,
Can I add an
Michelle.
amendment to that?
It's been moved and seconded, moved by Commissioner Laird, seconded by Commissioner North. Discussion, Commissioner Milne.
If I could, I'd like to propose an amendment for these positions to be the term of until next meeting. Will you two be able to have something for us for those positions? Potentially some examples or something where we can move forward with the actual documented thought process of how the officers are put in place, their terms, as well as their authority and responsibilities.
So, Mr. Commissioner, we can give you examples, I'm sure, of bylaws.
Right, and that's
that
all I'm
out-
asking for, something
That
for the,
outline that.
this
We need to
board.
have an idea of how often you plan to meet as the Board of Trustees. Monthly or
probably
quarterly?
monthly is what I assume.
That's the recommendation.
But that, per his recommendation, so, but I'd like to just make this make it a amend till next meeting, where we can then look at those positions, vote on them, and then vote for officers again.
Point of
So-
order,
so-
point of order,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
go ahead, Commissioner Laird.
I think that Mr. Milne's, Commissioner Milne's motion is out of order. And it's been called for a vote on the election first.
No, it's not out of order. I think that the point of order for clarification is correct, and a motion to amend would be appropriate. Commissioner Milne, if you can more succinctly state what your amendment is, then we could consider
Okay.
that, see if there's a second to it.
My amendment would be to make my motion to amend your guys' motion would be that these positions are to be held until next meeting of this board to determine the rules or the responsibilities of those positions at that point.
So if I understand what you're saying that these appointments, this, of officers, would be only until, the next, meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Natrona County Parks and Recreation System?
Yes.
All right, are you clear on that, Michelle? Is there a second?
That's for an amendment.
That's just for the,
Dallas has to approve that because he made the approval. I mean, he made the motion.
No,
I
that's-
seconded
Dave,
that.
that's not correct in terms of parliamentary procedure. It goes like this. If there's a second to his amendment, then we vote on the amendment, and then we go back and vote on the original. If his amendment fails, then we just go back to the original. So is there a second to the motion to amend?
Respectfully, I disagree with you on that.
That's-
That the person that makes the motion has to.
I think the
be
ruling's been
receptive.
made. Let's move on.
That's not Robert's rules. It's just not accurate or correct. But is there a second to the motion to amend of Commissioner Milne? So there's no second, so the motion to amend fails. Any more discussion?
Call for the vote.
So at this point, we will ask all in favor of the election of these officers as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
nay.
And I will abstain. So I believe that carries.
Start calling you Nancy Pelosi over there, though.
Got rid of Joe Biden.
Mr. Chairman, proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. We will move on now that the election of the officers has been approved. We'll move on to the certificate of organization. Do we have any discussion on that, legal counsel? Provide your input, please.
No, Mr. Chairman, this has been previously provided. I can just fill in the officers that were just elected. And then this is to be signed by the Secretary of the Board of Trustees, also approved by the Chair, and then it can be filed at the Secretary of State's office.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Commissioner Nicolason.
there's a typo with Commissioner Friel's name for the 5-year term.
Oh, okay. We'll need to correct that, please, before we get the signatures on that. Any other discussion on the,
I'd make a motion to approve.
do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. So carried. Okay, have the consideration of the adoption of the emergency parks rules as they currently stand. Do we have any discussion on that from legal?
No, Mr. Chairman, these are the rules that were previously adopted by the commissioners back in 2021. I think the intent is just to get these back in place, and then we'll go through the required notice and rulemaking period under the Administrative Procedures Act to adopt final rules.
Okay, all right, so these have already gone through once as far as that, so we can actually implement these as of today with an emergency.
These can be adopted once the certificate of organization's been filed with Secretary of State, and then the rules are filed with the county clerk's office.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman?
Chairman, or, sorry, Commissioner Nicolason.
These were adopted in May of 2021. Going through them, I think they're ripe for revision. I think there's a ton of stuff in them that's vague. I think there are internal conflicts. I think I don't see an Appendix A, which is referenced. I think that the status of the gun club, the Platte River Rod and Gun Club, the status is a little, it's not included in one area and it is included in another. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on these, and I hope that that work can be done as soon as possible. I do think it's important to go ahead and get something in place today, and look forward to this board and council making these into something that fits our county a little bit better, and resolve some of these conflicts.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address that. So the advisory board and the Parks Department, in coordination, we had some meetings with the sheriff's office. We do have some proposed revisions to these, so that'll be a good starting block for the Board of Trustees to finalize some revisions. We spent quite a bit of time in late 23 and early 24 coming up with some clarifications and items there, and providing some better direction and I guess discretion for the Parks Director on the reservation system and how restrictive the campsites can be and whatnot. So we do have a good starting point for this Board of Trustees to start off on these revisions.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Heather, these rules that we're looking at right now are strictly emergency park rules to get us by until they can go through the process and be adopted properly, correct?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, so we will have time with these emergency rules in place to be able to have a second advisory board, or maybe even the same board or whatever, come together, do reviews, use the suggestions that have already come up, because these were kind of in play a little bit, so you've seen where there could be some areas for improvement. And then we should be able to move forward with the true resolution for the true rules at that point, right?
Yes, yep, that is the plan.
Okay, good. Just confirming.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Nicolason.
what, council, what is the, is there a period, a maximum period of time that emergency rules can be in effect and therefore would drive how quickly we adopt new rules?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Treasurer, I believe that these can be in effect up to 180 days.
Okay.
So we would like to get,
6 months.
Okay, so we got 6 months to work on this, and I'm sure there's gonna take all 6 months to get the new stuff in place, as long as it took us last time to move through this, so we'll start working on that as soon as possible with the assistance of Michael and the advisory board, as far as what they've already come up with, as far as things that they recommend changing, and as well as the input of the commissioners and the board. So everybody will have an opportunity to voice that information. So with that, do I have a motion? If we don't have any other discussion, do I have a motion to approve the emergency park rules?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. I will be abstaining. Okay. Future operations, that's something that we're gonna have to, we know we're gonna be working on the park rules, the revised park rules. We will reconsider, if any of the other two elected officers don't want to be in those positions. We will address that at the next meeting. And we will move forward. As of right now, my recommendation would be to maintain the citizen board while we're working through this to assist this board in developing new park rules. And that way we have more opportunity for public input because more people are going to have the opportunity to have direct communications with those members as well as ourselves. So, any other discussion on future operations?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to future operations, I think that we should continue to delay having the advisory board meet and work until we have specified, outlined in some respect, the nature, scope, and scope of their duties. I think that we need to clarify in writing, and we need to adopt some sort of policy that indicates what their role and relationship with Mr. Brown will be and what their role and responsibilities and reporting to us will be. I think in the meantime, we ought to continue, this board of trustees ought to continue meeting with Mr. Brown on a monthly basis, and maybe we can't dive into every lake permit application he receives. But we were the publicly elected officials, and this does fall under our overall duty. So I'd like to see us continue to be very active until we get this thing off and running. And I am not sure if it won't be in short order where we have maybe a different board of trustee. We don't have to have the county commissioners be this board of trustees. And in fact, we might have one or more of the 5 of us county commissioners step back if and when a good member of Natrona County that we think should be appointed as a board of trustees. So I think we ought to avoid the gray area of this advisory board for a little while longer.
I appreciate your input, but I do disagree. At this point in time, I believe that the advisory board has a very limited input, but they have worked with our parks director in working with things, and I do believe that that's something that needs to continue, at least for the short term, until we have a description of what our responsibilities are, as well as what their responsibilities are, if any, at that point in time. The public needs to have that opportunity to know exactly who to contact and continue to do that. For the sake of transparency, I think that we need to maintain that. I'm not saying that we expand their duties. All I'm saying is that we just need to allow them the opportunity to continue to speak up. None of us at this point in time know what the direction of this board is going to be, who's going to be on this board in the long term, or exactly how it's going to operate. So while we're in that process, I do believe that we need to continue to have the Citizen Advisory Board continue to meet.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to have somebody send me the emergency parks rules that are now in effect. Are they on there?
Yeah.
Okay, they've been emailed to us already.
They're on our agenda.
Do you do a document that says they've been adopted, or what do you do? And has the sheriff got a set of these?
Mr. Commissioner, he does.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
I would like to
Commissioner
say
Milne.
one more comment, Commissioner Milne. I want to thank the person who only gave me 1-year term on this. Whoever did that, I thank them.
Yeah, reference future operations, same comment as for the election of officers. I think that needs to be delineated out, documented. If I was on that board, honestly, I don't think I'd punt everything that came to a vote. Without clear rules, without clear expectations, authorizations, as a member of that board, I would not be comfortable making any recommendations or votes to move forward as well. My recommendation for future operations until we have some more documented, a better idea, guidance for that board or Mr. Brown would be that we maintain status quo at this time, and suspend that advisory board meeting until we have this board a little bit better documented as far as roles, authorizations, responsibilities.
Okay, thank you. Michael, are there any big items that are actually coming up before the Parks Board in the near future?
No, probably the only thing I could see is some requests for volunteer effort at Rotary Park and Health Half Acre, but the individuals on those committees can do that request, you know. There, we don't have to have a Parks Advisory Board meeting to do that.
Okay,
So, no, I don't believe so.
so do you feel that it would not be detrimental if we did suspend it at this point in time?
I would be
For-
fine with that. That wouldn't be detrimental at all. Honestly, the public, that shows, most meetings don't have any public coming to them. And, some of those board members, they typically will call me if they have heard an issue from a user group, well before the meeting. So they don't hesitate to call me and say, hey, we need to fix this picnic table at this campsite because it's broken or something, you know, things that they hear from user groups. So no, I don't think the meetings are necessary at this time till roles are clearly defined.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. Then,
Mr. Chairman.
yeah, Commissioner Mill.
One more time, just to make sure we're being clear here. Do you guys think you'll have some good recommendations next time this board meets? Is a month more than adequate time, or can we even maybe move it closer to 2 or 3 weeks for us to meet again in order to get everything lined out? Or do you want a full month?
I think I could get some adequate documentation within 2 weeks. I think the county attorney's office will probably have more valuable input into the structures of these boards because I'm not familiar with them, but I will investigate on my own and provide what I can find on how they should operate.
So I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Milne, I think that we can get you examples of what our current boards have pretty quickly. And then if you would like us to put together draft bylaws for you to consider at your next meeting, I would like a month for that, if that's what you're thinking.
I'm not asking you to write everything, but a good framework would be great where this board would be able to kick off something like that
Okay. So I believe that we can have a draft for you to consider it in a month, yes.
in a month. So your recommendation is a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Nicolason.
yeah, so if we can get, Heather, the bylaws from some of the outside boards in the next 2 weeks, then we can hopefully start digesting them and giving you feedback and Michael feedback, and Michael can give you feedback. You know, maybe there are some things that clearly aren't applicable and won't work. Maybe it's, you know, fair and rodeo specific or library specific or whatever. Health department's the other one. But I do think that there are some boards out there, and I mentioned Weed and Pest, and I mentioned Fair Board, that are operating pretty well. And Airport's running, I think, quite well. So we may be able to, plagiarize from some of those bylaws.
Mr. Chairman, since I'm the secretary, these documents require my signature, so, Mr. Board Chairman, are those your notes?
Oh, I need those back, Commissioner Laird, so
Okay.
if I can have all those back, I'll get you a clean copy.
I'm gonna give them right back to you. Gotta make sure I got all of them here. Because I need a clean copy from the county attorney of that and this other certificate of organization, so I can sign those. And you get those done, I'd like to sign them tomorrow. You tell me they're done, I'll come to your office and sign them.
Same here.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few clerical questions, and maybe this is premature, but with this new Board of Trustees, does that change how change order requests are processed for, say, our lodge construction? How I do vouchers and accounting, at this point in time, am I still operating as if it was yesterday?
At this point in time, I would say you can continue the way you have been, because until we have the bylaws, the rules and everything else adopted, then it's going to then just continue to do it the same way. I see no reason to change that and complicate things at this point in time, because we need to get people paid. We need to get things pushed through and continue to run those through the commission as needed. And feel free to continue to communicate with me on these and let me know what's going on, but I do think that they need to be pushed through the same way so they can be expedited and so we don't have a stall in the process.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
have a question. To both chairmen, Peter, I'm wondering about your notes. So your notes have, the copy I have on the computer is a clean copy. Those are your notes. Are we intending to pass the ones that are on the screen or the ones that you've edited?
No, my handwritten notes are not complete. They're just things I noted. In some cases, no. So we're passing what's part of the packet.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other suggestions on Michael's question or discussion?
Well, the current capital construction projects need to keep going through the BOCC like they have been. COR is going up the same way. We don't want to upset that apple cart in any way and cause delays or whatever. So continue with that. We need to be mindful of, and hopefully we can have discussion in the future of budget impacts and how that's all going to look for our next fiscal year. So that, and we'll need you, Michael, and council to confer with our county clerk and see if we're going to do a hybrid kind of thing, or if it's going to stay pretty much how it has been, or if we're going to look at something that's totally an outside board thing. So anyway, we're going to need to have conversations about that.
Mr.
Commissioner Mill?
Heather, okay, even though the players are the same, we're two separate entities, the BOCC and the Board of Trustees. Is there any MOU or anything that we need to meet any kind of legal requirement or anything like that in order to start to keep these funds merged at this time? Or what are the particularities of that stuff?
So, Mr. Milne, I think that's a good question. I guess I don't know the answer to that right now at this particular stage. I think with respect to like the capital projects that you've discussed, Contractually, it's the commissioners that are the owners
Right.
of those projects. So I agree that that process will remain the same.
But moving forward, if there's I don't know, a boat ramp that needs fixed or a shelter or whatever that wasn't in budget that needs to be done, how is that going to all be handled together? I mean, we can kind of take a look at maybe what the joint powers for the Hall of Justice and Detention Center do, and I don't know if we have a MOU between those separate entities and the BOCC and those entities, or if we can just follow that lead of, hey, we need a little money over here.
I
I
think there's a
don't
lot of
know.
options for
Yeah.
us to look at, for sure.
If I don't mean to add to the pile, but can you have some kind of, if not guidance, just kind of a good idea for us on the next meeting? Thanks.
All right, do we have any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, at what point do we solicit new members of the Board of Trustees? Do we do it now? Do we do it next year? Do we do it after we have our bylaws established, our rules established?
At this point in time, I don't think it's appropriate to solicit anybody, any new members or anything like that. I think that's something that we need to get our bylaws figured out. I think we need to get our rules in place, and then we can discuss that at a later date.
Unless somebody resigns from their position as a Board of Trustee of the Parks and Rec. Okay,
All right. So. We have a motion to go into executive session. 16-4-405A-2, or you at A-II? Or do we need to still go into executive session?
I guess unless the trustees have any matters, I don't have anything for executive session today, Mr. Chair.
I don't have anything for executive session, so unless one of the other members does. Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have any other discussion? Okay. Yep, public comment?
It's not on the agenda.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
right
Oh,
up there.
excuse me.
So, okay, we'll open it up to public comment.
You even get to sit down if you like this time. So.
Rosemary Saban, Natrona County resident. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's something going on. I'm watching the underlying currents there, and I think there's some kind of conflicts of interest or something, so I'll be watching. You guys are really trying to steer and guide this ship. I don't know what's up. I'd really be curious to know what your notes said. You keep chewing on the wires, you're not going to like the outcome. Thank you.
Bruce Lamberson, 2449 Hogadon Road. Excuse me. Thank you. First of all, you're stepping into some weird stuff, and I'm looking at you and going, well, you're two different people, every one of you, commissioners and trustees. Now, there's a word we haven't heard in 25 years. That's a big one, I think. Trustees is a whole new ballgame, and it's long overdue. And I just really appreciate the courage of you as commissioners to form this board of trustees and what all it'll entail. And it's going to take a minute, for sure. But I agree with Peter that whether you're a trustee or the chair or whatever, you got to keep charging ahead on this. A few quick comments, take it or leave it, that's fine. That's what public comments are for. And that's maybe where your ex-advisory board or president advisory, board, whatever, those people who want to participate in this process should be here for the trustees meetings at the public comments. Because as far as I know, there hasn't been any specific role for the advisory board. It's just been kind of floating around out there. It's depending on the members. So anyway, let them show up at the public comments. Suggestions. Mimic the successful boards you have in this county. Yes, don't reinvent the wheel. You've got the airport board, the parks, the fairgrounds board. There's some good boards. And maybe go to some of their ex-members to fill your seats as this process unfolds. I think that's a great resource. I think it's going to be real positive what's going on. The emergency rules thing, I know, like many of you people on the sheriff's department, the sheriff, the undersheriff, they're not interested in 30 and 60-day rules. They're interested in black and white. And, so whatever, but I wouldn't expect those rules to, be enforced tomorrow, especially if it's a temporary thing. So I don't think there's a ton of emergencies right now and, deal with it. But on behalf of the sheriffs I know, or the deputies or whatever, they need to have something they really know they have support from the trustees and the trustees believe in. So some of this stuff's going to take some time. Hang in there because I think it's going to work out very well. A lot of the things that you'll be discussing as trustees predate Michael, Hagler, 3 other, whatever they were, supervisors of parks that are no longer here. I'm willing to help as the librarian or something because I remember when John Doyle was the head of the trustees back in the 90s. I think he told me to shut up a few times and get out of there. My time was up. But anyway, I do have history on the signs, the picnic shelters, the kiosks, all these things that have just been, and I just say, move slowly. Avail yourselves the opportunity to reconsider those things because some of the stuff the trustees will be looking at, it might be 5 or 6 years old and maybe things have changed. So I think just breathe. And this thing's going to work out really well, I think, but it's going to take some time. And again, thank you for getting the ball rolling, and hopefully it's something we'll have forever. And we can start running the Parks Department like it should be run. And I'm happy to try and answer any questions pertaining to the mountain. I don't know anything about the lake. But thanks again, and we'll see you again.
Didn't ride your bike today?
No, sorry about my casual period. I didn't know this meeting was happening until a couple hours ago. But anyway, next time I'll wear a tie. But thanks again.
Any other public comment? We will move to trustees' comments. Steve, anything?
I have nothing to say except for I apologize for not being here, but got stuck behind a very horrific accident over in Douglas. So anyways,
Okay.
Somebody can catch me up later on.
Trustee Milne?
I've made enough comments, I think, today. I still back them up. I think it was a mistake, but we are where we are, and I'll be very happy to see those roles defined clearly next meeting. Thanks.
Trustee Nicolason? Anything? Trustee Laird?
I'm glad that we were at least appointing the rules, which I know has been on everybody's mind. So for that, I feel like we've accomplished something today. And I'm sure that it'll all work out politically in some manner.
All right. I don't have any other comment.